And you said on CNBC that you felt that the government kind of was doing too much to rescue some of these companies, and you were saying things like you didn't care if the hedge funds got wiped out. And I just wondered, so what would that look like if the government were to do what you recommended? And, what you were saying were things like, oh, they wouldn't get to summer in the Hamptons, and who would care if they got wiped out? But, I also wondered, like, that sort of applies to, well, you tell me, maybe it doesn't apply to people like you, but would you be willing to be wiped out?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really been defined by my money. I think I was an evolutionary person with the same values. I may have been a little more douchey when I was younger or harder to deal with, but I was still the same person, and I frankly felt that I had the same worth as a human being when I was growing up on welfare, or when I was in my 20s or 30s, or now in my 40s. I think that, money is a projection that other people use. And I used it on myself for a while, and now I use it less. And so, being in a position to actually realize that, the school teacher that makes $60,000 is just as important as I am is the truth. And so, yeah, you could take it all away. I don't really care. It'd be a fun ride no matter what. I think I have a great set of memories that I've created for myself. And the journey's been a blast, and I hope to have another 50 years of those things. What I was speaking about on CNBC was just my frustration about not wanting to acknowledge, where the Federal Reserve and Treasury were not acknowledging how the actual economy works. The United States is an economy where the overwhelming majority of the GDP is generated by consumers. And the way that, consumers lift up the American economy is by spending money. And when you take revenues away from the American consumer because they're unemployed or because they can't earn wages, then they're going to spend less, which means that the economy contracts and you have a recession. So first principles thinking would tell you that you put money in the hands of consumers, and you put enough money in their hands such that the amount that they have exceeds what they need to live, and then the excess spending they will spend. And the reason why that's important is then it forces companies to then reopen faster, hire people more. Invariably, what you'll see is then they'll also have to pay them more because, again, these consumers have more money. But that's actually all a good rebalancing of what's been happening for the last 40 years, which is that the pendulum has swung. In economic theory, you say that the pendulum swings between labor and capital. And in the last 40 years of trickle-down economics, what we've really done is swung the pendulum so far towards capital that people who are the labor class don't really have the earning power that they actually had before. And putting a lot more money into their hands, where effectively you have to pay them more to come back to work, isn't a bad thing. It will recalibrate what is a very lopsided distribution of leverage. And so getting power into the hands of labor and getting more money into the hands of labor actually sort of subverts and sort of puts an end to trickle-down economic theory. And it kind of worked in the 80s, but frankly in the 90s and 2000s and, now it's a dated economic philosophy that doesn't map to how the world works.